I don't know if it's because I'm going to be attending a wedding this week, but I've been reflecting on my dating life and just kind of thinking about it and seeing how I got to this point. This point being 28, single, and not even interested in dating anybody. When I tell this to my family, whether it be my mom, my aunt, or whoever, they kind of always freak out when I tell them this. We have a lot of men in the family, but a lot of them aren't dating. We're all mainly concerned about careers and kind of enjoying life more than finding someone to enjoy life with. But with my cousin getting married this week, it's kind of made me think more about why I am the way that I am now. And I could tell you a million times that I'm focusing on myself and, I just have standards. And while all those things are true, I think they come from a really bad place, if I have to admit. To no one's surprise, I'm a huge Juice WRLD fan. And that's because when I had my first heartbreak was around the time that he was on his amazing run. All Girls Are the Same, back-to-back hits, and really personifying my emotional roller coaster that was going on at that time. My first relationship lasted for about 2.5, almost 3 years, and ended with me threatening to throw out my ex's clothes on the front yard of my house. I'm not making this video to place all the blame on one person, but to really show the red flags that I missed and how it kind of changed me from an innocent person who didn't know what love was to somebody who was beyond corrupted. When I met my ex, it was like straight out of a movie. We had the same math class and I was like Peter Parker, head over heels for this girl. I couldn't stop staring at her in class, and I made it my mission throughout my entire junior year to put myself in every place that I could to get FaceTime with this girl. And I'm not kidding. I wasn't in culinary club, but the culinary club in our school would sell cookies during lunchtime, and I noticed that she would always buy a cookie. So I remember helping convince the culinary teacher to let me sell cookies with them during lunch just so I could say hi to this girl. Prior to this, I had never really had any interest in dating in high school. I didn't really flirt with anybody, and I was the king of missing signs. My friend would tell me all the time, like, that girl likes you, you should go talk to her, and I would always just be too scared to approach. That was until I ran into this girl. We'll call her Cindy for the video. And Cindy was my type. She was Latina, she was not too tall, but not super short, curly hair with a piercing, and she was from up north like me, but we both found ourselves in Georgia. And after months of me being weird and trying to make small talk and her catching me staring in class, I finally asked her out to go on a date. And I remember Googling best places to have a first date, and they kept saying go to a coffee shop because the smell of coffee makes you fall in love or something like that. And I remember asking her to go to Starbucks, telling her I'll pay, and I wanted to go on a date. To my surprise, she said yes, but she had to ask her mom. We ended up going on that date, and because she didn't drive but I did, her mom wasn't comfortable with me picking her up, so she dropped her off at the Starbucks while they went shopping in Walmart. A little weird for a first date, but all in all, it went pretty good. And from there, we would hang out pretty often. I started picking her up from school in the mornings. I started dropping her off, and we were pretty much hanging out all the time. And as I was getting to know her, this is probably the first red flag that I should have noticed, but didn't pay any mind to because I was so head over heels. I noticed that every story that she would tell me as we were getting to know each other had her being the victim. I know we all kind of tend to do this when we look back at our lives, but I mean literally every story she was the victim and whoever else was the bad guy. I didn't have much lore at that time. Like I said, I never dated, but she would tell me about her exes, and every story ended up being about how bad they were, how they did her dirty, or how they were liars. And I didn't question it at all. I honestly was believing her so much that I would get mad at the exes for her. Like, damn, that's so messed up that they could do that to you. And I think this kind of put some blood in the water that kind of showed that I was like really gullible and way too head over heels for somebody. I'm not saying you can't be like that. Like, there are genuinely healthy relationships, but at this time, I didn't know what a healthy relationship was or what a toxic one was. And I assumed whatever we were building was healthy, but it started going from just her exes being bad people to stories about her sister being a bad person and her mom being a bad person and how her dad was treating her wrong. And it seemed like the whole world was against her, and I would believe everything. And even when she started saying that my friends were not good for me, I started to believe that too. She didn't outright say that, but she would do small little things that made me guilty for having an outside circle or having people in my life that weren't her. At first, it started with small offhand comments. I wasn't the most popular person in school, but I always managed to know somebody in the vicinity. I was in a debate club, as nerdy as that is, but at one point I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I had friends in the culinary club, I had friends in soccer, and I just kind of knew enough people to always have somebody saying hi to me randomly. And this would piss piss her off all the time, especially when it was another girl that would come up to me and say hi, or God forbid, give me a hug. At first, she would just make joking comments, and then as the talking stage progressed, it would honestly come off as like accusations that I was flirting with those girls. And after trying to tell her so many times that that's not the case, that they don't matter to me and she's the only one I focused on, it got easier to just not interact with other people at all. And heading into my senior year, that's kind of how it ended up being. While I still had friends and maintained good relationships, I remember avoiding being around people because I didn't want to have to deal with that. We would start having lunch in the car so we weren't in the cafeteria and somebody would come up and ruin the mood. I would cancel plans with friends because I wanted to give my time to her. And before I knew it, the only people I was hanging out consistently were with like her and her little brother, because I knew having these other relationships, friends or whatever else, would just spark unnecessary conflict. And it didn't matter how much I argued that they were just friends, it would always end up with her getting louder than me or crying and showing more emotion, and end up making me feel like the bad one for sticking up for what I believed was right. And that was also one of the biggest issues with the entire relationship. It was way one-sided, not in terms of the chemistry. Like, I think we both liked each other and the chemistry was authentic, but when it came to dealing with problems or whose problems were heard out more, if I had an issue, it didn't matter how wrong she was or how in the red she was, it would always end up with me having to calm her down and apologize for making her feel bad, because instead of accepting accountability or saying sorry, the conversation would just go so left and she would end up showing more emotion in terms of like crying or, gaslighting me enough that I would have to end off the conversation with saying, I know you didn't mean to do that and I'll get over it, or it's okay. And it was always weird that I would bring up the issue, but I would always be the one apologizing in the end. I mean, this relationship went on from the end of junior year throughout my entire senior year, and then a year after high school, where I went to like this year-long tech institute. This weird emotional manipulation really sucked for the health of the relationship because it made me less willing to actually talk in the relationship. I was still very much head over heels for her, but I knew that what I said didn't really matter as much. It was a very one-sided relationship, like I said, and it didn't help that my music taste at that moment was kind of reinforcing everything that was happening to me. I listened to a lot of, Love is Rage, All Girls Are the Same, and that kind of genre of sad, like, love music. And the stories that they were telling were true to my life, so I kind of just thought this is how relationships are. Like, the girlfriend is always going to be toxic, and you kind of have to deal with the emotional baggage as you go. And all the messed up things that were happening became things that I accepted as just second nature. Something that I really hated looking back, because this I know has created trust issues in my later life and all the relationships I've had after. I hate when people take something that I tell them in confidence and bring it back up as like a weapon against me. I try not to overshare on this channel too much because I do think there is a limit to the things that you can say. But I talked about how for a lot of my childhood, I traveled from school to school, state to state, country to country, and it made me always feel very distant from whoever I was with or wherever I was at. And I would confide in my girlfriend that like at times I felt lonely or I didn't feel like I fit in, and it was hard finding the man I was supposed to be as I was growing up. And anytime we would get into a serious fight, the things that I said in confidence would always be thrown in my face, and not on accident. It felt like right when they knew that there was a major problem and it wasn't some lighthearted argument that I was willing to let go so easy, the first insult or the first thing that they would hit back with was like, oh yeah, that's why you don't have a lot of friends, or that's why you've always been lonely. And while I would act like it didn't bother me, it always felt so crazy to be backstabbed by the person that you trusted. And I think because the music was making me feel like this was just normal, like this is not toxic, this is actually what people love, and this is the relationships that people are chasing, that I would be hurt by it very deeply, but write it off as just like a necessary evil because I was in love. And by this point, I would say like kind of mid to end of the senior year, I was already so distant from the friends that I had. Like the bros that I talked about in the last video, not the fake friend, but the group of friends that we had, I wasn't getting on the game at all. And if you know me, games are a part of my life. Like I grew up with Call of Duty. When I had no friends, I had Call of Duty and a PS3 mic. And when I was dating her, I wouldn't get on at all. I wouldn't join the party if I got on. And the only communication I had with the bros at that time was maybe a group chat that I could barely text back in because she would go through my phone. So at this point, it literally felt like the walls were caving in. I had nobody to turn to that would take my side. The only people I was hanging out with a lot were her her family, and every argument that we got in would end up being my fault, no matter what the situation was. So I talked about how I felt alone growing up. I felt the most alone I've ever felt while being in a relationship. And looking back at it now, it's like, would you have changed the past? And I usually say no, but when it comes to that relationships, I think I would have. I see a lot of people now talk about how they want a girlfriend or how they can't land one and they're getting mogged and they need to look max to impress the women. And while getting girls is one thing, being in a toxic relationship is in a whole nother league of its own. If I knew what a healthy relationship looked like at the time, I don't think I would have stayed in the relationship as long as I did. And it was probably at the worst moment possible. Like, I was doing pretty good throughout high school. I remember thinking about college a little bit, but by senior year, I was so in the depths of the relationship and it felt like a mood swing was happening every other day, or we were going through some problem all the time, that it really took a lot of my focus away from the things that were important, to the point that I graduated senior year, but it almost felt like I was just floating through senior year. All the events that we had, whether it be prom or the senior night and all the different celebrations, I was kind of half there for them, but not fully enjoying the moment. I was either figuring out how to cheer her up from something I made her mad about, or stressing that we were going to have another argument. I mean, I couldn't even enjoy the senior sleepover that they hosted at the David Buster's. For some reason, her mom didn't want her to go, but I didn't want to miss the senior event because, you know, you're only going to be a senior once for most people, unless you're a super senior. And I wanted to make the most of it. But even on a night like that, where you're supposed to be having fun in an arcade that's fully paid for with food, she still found a way to make me feel guilty for enjoying myself, to the point that she said if I went to that event that she would block me and now, I still went to the event, don't get me wrong, but the morning after, I remember having to beg to get on her good side again and apologizing for simply enjoying my night with my friends. This constant limbo of not knowing where we stood or how fragile the relationship was, with the combination of me abandoning my circle and her family being like the closest people I had at the time, made me almost feel dependent to keep that relationship alive. Even though it lasted 2 years, it died probably in the first 6 months, if I'm being honest. But even with me feeling tense around her, after graduation, as much as I wanted to leave the relationship, it felt like unleavable, if that makes sense. Her mom knew me well. I knew her family so well. It felt like this is just how it was gonna be. That was until the summer after the graduation. Once I was out of high school and kind of thinking about what I was gonna do with my life, there was a very weird conversation that came up. I remember not wanting to go to college, so I told her that I would be working more, and to put myself through that IT technical school thing, it was like a year-long program. I was gonna have to go to that year-long program every day in the morning and pick up work every day in the evening. And prior to this, we were in high school, I had nothing but time, and I could give her all my attention. But when I started to focus on my own life and make sure that I didn't get stuck in the post-high school confusion, I noticed a change in how she was acting towards me, and it made me so upset. At this point, I changed my life to be something that she could be happy with. There was nobody else taking my attention away, and everything I was doing was for us. But to her, because I wasn't giving her my attention, it wasn't good enough, or it wasn't worth the struggle that I was going through. I mean, bro, I was waking up at like 4 a.m. every morning, driving all the way downtown in hour-long traffic, going to this year-long course, studying all the way up until maybe 5 p.m., and then clocking in as a pizza delivery driver basically until 12. I did that for almost close to 6 months, because after 6 months of doing that, you enter your internship phase. And at the 5th month of me doing that, we were having fights almost every single day. And these weren't like the typical fights. This was just constantly about me working too much, not giving her enough attention, and she just felt that we were disconnected. And while I kept trying to tell her that it would only be for a year, and that after that I would be in a more stable spot and I wouldn't have to be away and doing all this so often, it just never really clicked with her. Until one morning, I woke up to get ready and I noticed that my car had a flat tire. And because it was so close to the time that I had to be in class, I couldn't change the flat tire, so I had to ask her to give me a ride. In the entire car ride, she was wearing earphones, and that's weird because never done that before. And the whole vibe of us was just very off from the morning because of the argument before, but I tried not to think of it too much because I had to go to class and focus. She drops me off, doesn't say anything, very silent car ride. I spend my whole day at class and I'm just dreading seeing her again friend because I know that we have a serious issue, but I don't know what she wants me to tell her. Like, I'm not going to drop out of this course that I need to take for my future. But the whole day passes. She's late to pick me up, but I don't say anything because I'm not trying to start a fight. And the entire car ride home, she's just telling me about how I make her feel so lonely and just everything that I'm doing wrong, even though what I'm doing is for us. And I tell her, I'm sorry, but I have to finish the course. I can't lose track of what I'm doing. And at that same moment, my friend calls me because I asked him to help me change the tire. And he said, yeah, bro, I'll be over. Just, let me know when you get back to your place and I'll help you change the tire. And she kind of made herself mad because she was like, why would you accept that phone call in the middle of this important conversation? Do you not care about me at all? Why are you putting everyone else in front of me? And when she said that, I didn't say anything at all. I literally just went silent. I shut down. I couldn't take it anymore. We get home and my friend is waiting in the driveway to help me change the tire. Without saying anything, I get out the car, I say what's up to him, and I focus on the tire because I wanted to scream. But we focus on doing the tire, and as we're doing it, I notice that she gets out the house and she leaves. I don't ask anything. I don't make too much of it. I just let it happen. Me and my friend changed the tire. I felt bad for making him help me, so I bought him some Chick-fil-A, and I said bye. I went home and I waited for her to come back. She comes back at like 9 p.m., maybe 10 p.m., and she tells me, I was hanging out with some of my girlfriends and I was telling them the situation and they agree with me. I was like, what do you guys agree about? They agree that you're not giving me enough attention and you're putting everything else before me, and that's not how you maintain a relationship or keep it healthy. I didn't say it in the moment, but I wanted to say it to this day. This relationship has not been healthy for a very long time. I felt like I lost every piece of myself over these 2.5 years, but I didn't say anything for the mere fact that I didn't want to rock the boat. But apparently me trying to work for a better future for us is the straw that broke the camel's back. In that moment though, I told her that her friends don't know what they're talking about and that I'm not cheating on her. I'm not talking to anybody else. I'm literally working and going to school and getting barely any sleep trying to do this. And I knew what was going to come next, but I think hearing it made me react differently than I thought. She just said, I wish you would be a better boyfriend. And I think in this moment, all the things and the person that I used to be before the relationship finally came back into my body and stood up for himself for once. And I just said, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm tired. I can't handle it anymore. You can take your stuff and you can leave. Because after graduation, she ended up moving into the house, which was a terrible idea thinking back at it now because I wasn't even in my own place. I moved her into my mom's house, which terrible idea looking back at. But I told her, hey, you can get your stuff and you can leave. We don't have to do this anymore. This isn't a fixable situation. I can't handle it. She doesn't take her stuff, but she leaves the house crying, and everyone in the house is like, what happened? What happened? I don't want to talk about it. I go in my room, I shut the door, I just go to sleep. The next morning, I go to class and I text her, hey, come to the house, get your stuff, or I'm going to leave it out on the front lawn. And looking back at it now, probably a bit dramatic, probably a little toxic in itself, but I felt such a shift change when she told me, I wish you could be a better boyfriend, because the person that I was prior to meeting her is not the person that I would see in the mirror in those times. The amount of ups and downs that we went through, the amount of times I was gaslit into believing I was causing the problems, the times that she would throw my own insecurities in my face just to be told that I was the one that was lacking was the craziest statement ever. And when I said that, she tried to argue for a little bit and say, no, we can talk it out. Let me come over and we'll just talk about it. But she could kind of sense that I was serious. And while she didn't get her clothes, she sent her stepdad and her mom to get them. That was the end. Or at least I thought that was the end. Well, there's not much more to the story after this. I realized that when I stood up for myself on that type of level, like on a I'm completely done type of level, it made her try. And this was something that I didn't really see the entire relationship. Like I said, I was head over heels, and I think she could sense that from the very beginning. So every situation, it was painted out that I was doing something wrong or that I missed a sign. And in this moment where I stopped tolerating it and just completely cut everything off and said, this is it, was the first time that I really saw her take accountability and try to be sincere for once. And that's when I realized to talk or to interact with a toxic person, they only understand what they've been taught to understand. Their love language and how toxic they are is because that's what they grew up around or the love that was shown to them. Whereas I'm very thankful for the family that I have and the upbringing that I was given, because as lonely as I say it was, where I was moving around to different school districts and different places, I always had a strong foundation of love in my own household. And I didn't have to fight for love. I didn't have to be toxic to receive it or to get attention. I was blessed to have family and a mother and people who would pour into me and teach me things and would go out of their way to show me that I was loved. And throughout this relationship, I realized I wasn't teaching her how to love. I was bending the knee to just kind of give in to toxicity. And it was easy to give into because it didn't require me to work on myself. It took all my worst habits and amplified them to the max. But the whole time, I was being manipulated and warped to be like somebody I wasn't. And even to this day, even though I know that's true and I look back at it and realize that this relationship shouldn't define me, I still hold on to some of those trust issues. Like, it's very hard for me to make a real commitment because I'm scared that the words that I'll say will be thrown in my face again. I'm scared that I'll show a girl that I'm really into her on a level that is kind of scary. Like, I don't want to be taken as gullible or advantage of, but I do want to fall into a sense of security that I haven't had for a while. And while I've had other good relationships after this one, I've always had some type of barrier up and I've tried to let it go down. But even when I get the slightest hint of the past, I put them right back up. And my past girlfriends have told me this too. Like, it seems like you're not all the way open with me or you're reserved in some way. And I tell them I'm not, and I try to convince myself that I'm not, but I know deep down, like, I have these barriers up that I just can't drop, or I don't know if I can. And this video probably won't drop them, but I feel like I haven't spoke about this openly to anybody ever. Like, that relationship stopped and I reconnected with my friends and got back to the old me, but I realized going through that I lost a part of myself. Maybe it was the innocence that I didn't know I had at times, but looking back at, I wish so badly to regain. And hearing how my cousin is talking about his future wife and this wedding that's coming up is showing me that it's very obtainable, because he told me that he had heartbreaks too, and prior to her he didn't know how to move past them, but when he met the person that he's supposed to be with, those things went away. And maybe that's like a lover's foolish mind playing tricks on him. I don't like to think that, because I want him to have a very happy relationship. I hope the same thing happens to me. I just haven't found it at the moment, but maybe addressing the issues of my past will help me find that. I don't know. Let me know down below in the comments if I sound like a chud reminiscing on his first girlfriend this many years later, or if you've been through a first heartbreak that has scarred you for longer than you realized. And if that's has been you, how did you get over it? I'd love to know. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to join the channel. Every subscription feeds my dog a dog treat. I appreciate all the support you guys have been showing lately. It means a lot, and I'll keep pumping out the videos. We have a good consistency here, so I want to keep it going. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Until next time.